fillet, first of all, must mark along the feather bones with our boning knife. Careful not to cut into the Scotch fillet. Gently pull the meat away as we slice. Then turn the set of ribs around, standing it up on its end. And you'll notice a nice little seam starting to open up hard against the bone. Follow that seam, keeping our knife hard against the bone and slice straight down, following the contour of the rib bones. Remove your bones, and you'll see in there, we'll see a beautiful tender Scotch fillet sitting right there. At the back end there, you'll see there's that paddy whack again. Just gently pull that out, roll the Scotch fillet out. Once you can't go any further, just slice it off. And then to remove the thin flank, I start at the top, slicing through and bringing my knife down parallel with the vertebrae, roughly 75mm from the eye muscle. To finish the process with my handsaw, all I have to do is slice through the remaining 3 ribs. And there we have the thin flank off the hind quarter. To remove the flank, I look for the lean meaty area at the top, get my knife, score around the outside, and gently remove it. Peeling back the membrane off the top and trimming off any excess fat. And there we have. To remove the rump and loin, I'm going to make a mark underneath the H-bone and making a cut across between the thick flank and the rump. Slicing through the meat, locating the cup joint. Then we get the handsaw and saw through the H-bone. Once you've cut through the bone, use your meat hook and then slice through the rest of the rump. And there you have your rump and loin. What I'm going to do now is bone this whole piece of meat out. First, I'm going to take out the tenderloin, bone out the sirloin, then I'm going to bone out the rump. And out of that rump, I'm going to get some subprimals. When you come back down to this end of the loin, this section here is where the hanger steak comes from. Firstly, to remove the tenderloin, must follow the rump bone down and all the way along the vertebrae to remove it. Finding the seam between the rump and the fillet, negotiating around the rump bone until you can remove the whole primal. Now I'm going to remove the silver skin. To produce the butt fillet, the centre cut, and the tail. There we have the 3 cuts from the tenderloin. Once the tenderloin has been removed, I'm going to locate the first vertebrae and make a mark along the bottom there to the fatty side, then roll the rump and loin over, locate the soft cartilage at the top of the rump bone, and draw a line between those 2 points. Then it's just a matter of just slicing straight through to separate the rump from the loin. There we have your loin and your rump. To bone out the rump, you'll need to make a mark down along the chine bone and roll the rump over hard on the bone, following the contours to release the meat. Once you've removed the bone, just trim off any excess fat. Now that the bone has been removed, I'm going to show you how to get 4 subprimals out of the 1 primal. To start with, I'm going to take off the tri-tip. Then I'm going to remove the rump cap, and with what we have left here is called the roast beef. I'm going to actually separate the rump eye centre from the rump eye side. Now, to take off the tri-tip, just find the little seam at the end of the tail and mark all the way through. Trim off any excess. The tri-tip. Now to remove the rump cap, find that seam in between the roast beef and the cap, and that'll pull away quite easily. With your knife, separate along that seam and try and remove all that fat still connected to the rump cap. There's your rump cap. Remove the excess fat, trim off the excess. There's a little bit of silver skin on the side there. That's best removed, otherwise it curls up during cooking. Now the grain runs across that way. We normally cut that way when it's still connected to the rump. But what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to slice across the grain. Gives us some lovely steaks. What I have left here now is called the roast beef. What I want to do with this now is separate this into 2 muscles. There's a seam that runs all the way along the top here. It's identified by this white fat mark. I've got to pick that seam up. What I'm going to look for is that sinew at the first slice. I'm going to follow that along all the way through to separate the 2. First of all, locate that bit of silver skin using the point end of your knife and just scrape along gently all the way along the top, revealing that connective tissue, as we can see there. Once you've separated the 2 muscles, remove the silver skin, and that gives you 2 beautiful pieces of meat. And to recap, the 4 subprimals I got out of the 1 rump was the tri-tip, the rump cap steak, eye rump centre, and eye rump side. The last primal from the rump and loin to bone out is the sirloin. All I have to do is run my knife hard against the bone, down the feather bones, turn the sirloin over, following the rib bones down, again hard on the bone, releasing the meat. Another cut we get from the loin is a T-bone. Mark them at the desired thickness, then cut them on the bandsaw, separating the meat as you slice them through, which gives us our T-bone. Here I am left with the butt of beef. All I have to do is remove the round, following the seams between the top side and the silver side. Using the point of my knife, I locate the first seam in between the silver side and the round and follow that all the way down. Then back up using the point of my knife over the kneecap, releasing the top of the round from the bone, then making an incision all the way through hard against the bone in between the top side Then getting my hook, and following the bone down, pulling at the same time, releasing the meat off the bone. From the round, I'm going to remove the cap, trim up the undercut, take the bone out, leaving me with a knuckle. I'm going to remove the cap. Slice in between the cap and the round, following the seam, pulling that back. Now to remove the undercut, I come on the opposite side, following the natural seam, around, and with that I've removed the patella bone. A little bit more trimming. From the knuckle, I'm going to remove the knuckle cover to give me the eye of knuckle. All I have to do is find the seam in between the eye of knuckle and the knuckle cover. All trimmed up. All we have left now is the top side and the silver side. All I do to remove the top side is make a slice up the top in between the two seams. Following all the way down. To remove the top side. First of all, I must remove the H-bone. This is done by carefully following hard along the bone. Just using the point of your knife. Then trim around the edges of the top side, removing any excess. And once you've done this, you will reveal the seam in between the cap and the top side. Follow along that seam to remove the cap, all the way around the primal. Trim off any remaining fat. I've trimmed the cap off, and there's your cap. To remove the silver side, I'll put my hook in the heel muscle at the top, then follow the seams in between the shank and the silver side. Holding my knife hard against the bone, letting the weight of the silver side do the work. And there's our silver side. I'll trim up the silver side and take off the heel muscle. I'll trim off the excess fat, follow the seam between the silver side and the heel muscle, and squaring off the end. To remove the silver skin, I just slide my knife in between the meat and the silver skin. A little trim on the side, and there we have your finished silver side. I'll remove the eye of silver side, which is sometimes called the girello. The silver side is made up of two muscles, and there's a seam in between that I must follow to remove the eye of silverside. The final stage of our beef hindquarter is the shin shank. First, I must remove the shank bone by cutting through the soft tissue between the two bones. Then I cut the Osso-Bucco on the bandsaw, slicing along the bone into equal portions, which gives us our Osso-Bucco.